We are really, really pleased to have Wes from the other coast with us today. As many of you know, he's a very accomplished pickleball player. I'm sure he'll get a chance to talk about some of those things. I didn't ask him for a bio, but I know for a long time he was rated in the top 5 to 10 players in the country. I'm sure he's still rated up there. I've asked you, the members, to give us questions, and as people sign in, I was going to have them ask their own question, but I don't see Bill Boyd, so I'm going to ask Bill's question and kick it off. Bill asks, what is something that you do, Wes, that we would never think to ask you about in terms of preparing for pickleball?
So something that I do that people wouldn't think about asking.
Yes.
I have the same. I'm very routine based, and I think that that's something that a lot of people focus on in terms of their pickleball. But I actually have the same diet that I follow the day of the tournament and before tournaments, and I won't deviate from that. And I think that's something that more and more players are starting to do. I think a lot of times when people ask the pickleball pros questions, it's a lot about what you do on the court and not off the court. So for me, it would be more of kind of that routine of my diet that I keep.
So what do you eat then?
So I actually have I eat the same breakfast. I eat a Greek yogurt. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat any meat. So a Greek yogurt with granola and fruit and honey and all of that, I eat that for the same week leading up to a tournament and then on each of the match days. And that kind of sustains me throughout the day, because I feel when people play pickleball, if they come from tennis, things are a little bit different in terms of tournaments, because in a tennis tournament, you know you're going to play at 11 o'clock, you're going to play at 2 o'clock, right? You have specified match times. Pickleball, you could be on and off the court, and you need to eat and hydrate more. So I feel like that meal sustains me for most of the morning of a tournament.
This is a fairly long one to read. So I'm going to read quickly from all the villagers who are fortunate enough to have been witness to not only your on-court skills, but just as importantly, your willingness to share your wisdom on your visits here. And I know you've been here before. You're a gentleman and an ambassador to the game. And that's from Jack Waltz. His question is, what separates the top 3 or 4 pros from the top 10?
That's an awesome question. That's something that for those of us that aren't in that top 3, we're trying to figure out where to get there. In my mind, I'll just kind of set the tone. I think right now in pickleball, on the men's side, I play mixed, but more of the focus is on the men's doubles. I feel like there's 2 guys that are separated from the rest of the pack, and it's Ben Johns and it's Matt Wright. Those are the 2 guys that a lot of us feel are at the very top. I think what separates them is not necessarily their physical skills, which are outstanding, but I feel like it's the mental preparation that they put into their preparation for pickleball. They're about 20 years apart from each other in age, so we couldn't say that it's, for Matt being in his 40s, he's not someone who is as quick as he was in his 20s, like Ben is. I think Ben's 21 now. But I feel like their mental preparation and their mental toughness and ability to make strategical adjustments during the match kind of separate them from the rest of the pack. That's what I've noticed as partnering with them, but also playing against them.
He followed with another question. He's wondering why people are using the drive more than the drop. That's how it appears to us. We get to watch a lot of matches on YouTube now. And he's wondering if it was the equipment. Maybe it's gripping a little bit better so players can put a little more cut. I know you put slices on your returns.
You slice a lot. So you're asking about the third ball, right?
Yeah, the third shot. With the propensity for people to drive it more often now, or so it seems, is that due to equipment, or is that because tennis players? Why would you think people are doing it?
I feel like more people are driving the third ball than were before. I think a lot of that has to do with more tennis guys coming in and women coming in. That definitely has a lot to do with it. I still feel like at the top of the game, we see more drops than drives for third balls. But what I've noticed recently, more so in men's doubles than what I used to see in mixed, is in men's doubles, if the return to you as a serving team was a lot shorter in the court, most of the top male players still would hit a third ball drop. But in the last couple of years, as the tennis guys have come in, I feel like more people have stepped in and initiated the pace.
Wes, we keep hearing, and we've heard for almost a year, boy, the game is changing, and that third drive is a lot of it. And we hear that all the time. It's changing, it's changing. But when I go on YouTube and I watch the gold medal matches, all 4 of them are up there strategically, dinking, playing that, looking for the opportunity for the pop. But is that fair to say that that's still an important part of the game?
Completely agree with you. I think about 2 years ago at Nationals, when we had our first Nationals in Indian Wells, and we had the ESPN3 coverage, and watching that final match between Ben and Kyle against Matt, and I think he was playing with Dave Weinbach. And for 99% of the match, the guys were all at the kitchen line dinking.
Yeah.
You know, every big tournament, and where you see that in the men's doubles game, you see the top players, the top 10, 15 players, they're better at the kitchen line. That's why they get to that round of the tournament. I've played pickleball now in tournaments for 8-9 years, and I've seen a lot of progression. Been part of the progression, enjoyed that process. But I feel like the women's game has gone even more towards the soft game than when I started. There was not much thinking going on, but what you're seeing now is you're seeing the Waters can rip the ball really hard, but they've had to improve their dinking. Simone, Corinne, all of those top players are dinking because they know their opponents are so good at attacking the ball. So it's moving more into the women's side as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. I believe Tweet is online. Tweet, would you like to ask your question if your mic is on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, Wes, you're a big hero here, a big legend. So thank you. And my question was, I understand you were a tennis player prior to pickleball?
Yeah.
Okay, a good tennis player too, I might say. So what are some of the challenges? I'm kind of new in pickleball. So what are some of the challenges you had from tennis to pickleball?
That's a good question. I think finding when to attack, because I think in tennis, when you get closer to the net and you see a short ball, you know that based on the equipment and your position, you can attack a ball, right? Whereas in pickleball, with the equipment, the ball composition, you can't really hit through your opponent as well as you could in tennis. So I feel like finding the right time to attack. And then the other difficulty coming in is learning how to use the soft game. I've found that a lot of my college tennis teammates, I tried to get them into pickleball about 6-7 years ago. They didn't want to play. Now they're all wanting to play. And their biggest struggle is hitting the ball too hard. So I feel like learning to dink is so crucial, but also you don't want to forget your skill set in tennis, and your willingness to attack is important. I was a little bit luckier because I played a more finesse tennis game. So it was a little easier for me to transition into pickleball than people who are more of that banging type player in tennis.
So how do you know when to attack? What's a rule of thumb, or what are some ideas?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I think it's twofold. If we look at where you're at the baseline, I think any time that ball sits up short and you have time to step forward and attack it, that would be the time to attack. Another time is when you're at the net. I feel like for people that are beginning or in the intermediate stage, I would not teach them to attack if the ball is below the level of their waist. I would say if the ball is up above your waist level, chest height above your head, if you can hit down on the ball, attack it. As you move into that more advanced rank, then you have to kind of experiment a little bit with those shots below the level of your waist.
Okay, yeah. Oh, good. Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Mick, our former vice president and enrollment coordinator, she asked, how do you regain focus after losing it during the match, other than call a timeout?
Oh, that's a really good question. So if you've burned your 2 timeouts, what do you do to refocus? Well, first of all, when I pick partners, I always make sure I pick a partner I have good chemistry with that can help me refocus if I lose focus. I think that's important. And also realizing that you have time in between each point where you can move, you can take some time, a couple of seconds to refocus and move away from the court. I feel like based on human nature, when we do things wrong, we want to step up and try to fix them right away. And so I know in tennis and pickleball, when people lose points, sometimes they feel, oh, I got to get up and serve right away. Or, oh, I need to get up at the line and be ready to return. So take your time. Something that I teach my tennis players, I coach high school tennis, is that I have them develop some sort of what we call a reset mechanism. So something that they can focus on mentally that calms them down. And as you can imagine, from human to human, we've got very different things that calm us down. Some of you may laugh at this. When I'm playing and I'm in a big point and I'm dinking the ball cross court, and sometimes you got to hit 20, 30, 40 dinks per point at our level, I think about Thai food. I love Thai food, and it relaxes me when I hit my dinks. I think about my bad Thai food, and that really helps me relax. Other people think about, I've had tennis players who think about the beach. They think about a good book. I had one kid a couple of years ago who on changeovers, it looked like he would be over at the fence, like talking to himself. And so I had to ask my tennis player, what are you doing over there? He said, well, I'm singing my favorite song and it calms me down. And I said, well, what's your favorite song? And he said, well, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was his favorite song. So again, finding some sort of reset mechanism that you can tap into is super important when you don't have a timeout left.
That is awesome. Thank you. Loretta, I think you finally did sign up. Loretta, is your mic on?
Yes.
Loretta, ask your question. And Loretta is one of our great 5-0 players who's won medals at the U.S. Open, golds.
Hi, Loretta.
Hi. I was wondering if you take any additional electrolyte, like pills or anything, or if you have a certain focus when you're playing in a big tournament.
So the first part of your question was, are there electrolyte
That you take, yeah.
Yeah, so I am part of the Jigsaw Health team, so I take their electrolyte packets. I usually have one I have a pretty big water bottle that I use, and I usually have one of those per match. If it's rec play or training, maybe once or twice a day. And then what was your second question? I'm sorry.
What is your specific focus when you're playing in a tournament?
Mm-hmm. Like within a specific match, are you thinking like strategy or a skill, or
are you focused on what you yourself are looking at in a game?
Good. That's a good question. So I feel like strategy is really important. My partners and I are always pretty analytical. We're recognizing our opponents and how they play and maybe some weaknesses that we see. And I feel like that's very important, but I feel like it shouldn't be the sole focus. You still want to play your style of game. I know sometimes if you're playing two opponents that just hit the ball really hard and it's not working for you to play your style, people may want to try to alter how they play. Maybe they realize, oh, we need to hit the ball hard too. And unless you've practiced that, I don't really feel like that's a good tactical switch. So I think coming in with a game plan is very, very important.
Okay.
But you also want to stick to what your strengths are.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Loretta. Rick Ian Natelli asks, what drills do you do before the first game of a tournament? In other words, I guess, how do you warm up?
Okay, so warming up, I like to spend probably about I would say 10, 15 minutes dinking. That's not obviously once your match is called, but that would be in the morning before your tournament starts. My two big drills that I focus on, besides dinking, I work on a lot of my resets. So I'll stand halfway back between the kitchen line and the baseline and work on my resets. And then I think that the common go-to drill that a lot of people use is playing skinny singles with your partner to warm up the morning of a tournament, and making sure you do that at all different angles too, not just straight ahead, but cross court as well.
Well, I'll ask Leon's question then. How often and how long do you practice?
In terms of tournament preparation, is that what he's asking?
I'm assuming so.
You know, for the big tournaments for us, you know, I can't go to the US Open because of my coaching schedule, but I play the TOC and the Nationals are the two big ones for me. And I would say in the month leading up to it, I probably practice 4 to 5 days a week. And I would say 3 to 4 of those days are just drilling. I don't do a ton of rec play. You know, once I get on site a day or two before a big tournament, I don't drill as much. It's more rec play to get, you know, because for a lot of us, we at that pro level, we don't live around a lot of our contemporaries. So oftentimes the best practice we get is when we all meet the day or two before a tournament. And it's really hard sometimes to figure out when to stop, because we know we have a tournament to play and we want to play all these great rec games. We don't want to burn out. That's what I loved about when I came to the Villages for those 4 years for that exhibition, was that the teaching part was really fun. The exhibition part was really fun. Playing with all of you was really fun and getting to know you. But for a lot of us, we got to stay the rest of the week and we would just play rec games for 8 hours a day. And that was something I miss very much, you know, and we were really blessed to have that opportunity. But to wrap it up, I would say the ratio for me is about 3 to 1 in terms of drilling versus playing rec games.
All right.
Hey, Larry,
Rachel.
Lisa,
Hi,
Loretta,
Rachel.
how you doing?
Hello.
A lot of you don't know this about our dear Wes, but he is quite an accomplished keyboard player. And we've had the good fortune of finding that out. And I do some singing and play guitar. And so when I first started hanging out with Wes, we ended up jamming a little bit, and then we put on a little concert for all the players. So that was big fun out in Brigham City, I think, Wes.
I remember when I walked into the Klein's house, and I had never met you before, and there's this, you were sitting there with the kids, you're playing your guitar and you're singing. I'm like, who is this awesome lady with a great voice? And we hit it off and played a lot of music. That was so much fun.
Well, Wes is a very diversified guy, and obviously such a great ambassador for our sport. You couldn't find a better guy. So I have a nickname for Wes. I call him the Jedi Master, and you know, he kind of uses his paddle like a lightsaber. And so you know, I'm about to sit down to a little pad thai food myself here, and I was just wondering. So I want to be clear: as you're dinking in a tournament, in a match, you're thinking about Thai food?
So in a long rally,
Yeah.
You know, let's say if you and I are playing against each other and you're cross court for me and I'm hitting my backhand dink, as the point goes on, you get tired, right? So our muscles kind of tense up.
Yeah.
So I think about something that calms me down. I think about pad thai as I hit.
I like it. I like it. And most of us know you were one of the first players on the scene. You and Enrique doing the switch of the hand thing. Do you ever teach people that? And what started that for you?
So I don't typically teach people that. I feel like the only place I would teach them to do that is if the ball is hit to their backhand side and they're out of position and they want a little bit of extra reach. I wouldn't teach it all of the time. I would just say, hey, this is an option for you. The reason why that started, and I'll try to keep it short here, but it's a unique story. So I was a baseball player growing up, and my parents found that when I was in school, I had a propensity to write with both hands. I would like to write with both hands. So when I started sports, my parents got me a glove for each hand. And I played 1 year right-handed or left-handed, 1 year right-handed, settled on my right hand. So that became my dominant throwing hand. And then for eating and riding and racket sports, I settled on my left. So when I got to tennis, I was later in life. I didn't realize I was serving with my right and hitting with my left, because this was more of a throwing motion. And I was hitting more with my left. And so my first tennis coach said, what are you doing serving right-handed, you should serve left-handed. It's such a weapon in tennis. And then when I went to pickleball, I was kind of more focused on just using my left. And Enrique, you whooped me a few times switching hands. I thought, well, I can do that. Why don't I start doing it? So I credit a lot of this to him beating me badly in my early days to being ambidextrous.
Klaus says, do you make a strategy or just play with your instincts in a big tournament?
My partner and I usually will scout our opponents a little bit. We'll watch them, so we'll come up with the strategy. But most of it is going to be using your skill to implement the strategy.
How do you pick your partners? I mean, do you go through all the parts? Do you rotate all the pros, rotate with each other, or how do you go about your partner?
I feel like it's game style wise. I mean, in mixed doubles, the man typically is more of the attacking, the finishing player, but in men's doubles, it could be dependent. I'm kind of more of the setup type of a player, the more consistent player, even though I can attack. So I typically look for people that are a little bit taller than me. I'm about 6'1", but people that are a little taller and more aggressive, because they'll complement me well. That's typically what I look for. And mixed doubles, I feel like people stay together a little bit more. Men's doubles seems to rotate.
Right, a lot.
Yeah.
Lisa, you had a question. I know you signed on before.
Question was that I have is that just as a high school coach and also as a person that helps other people learn, we have people that their biggest competitor is themselves in terms of their mental toughness. And there's a lot of people that are out there proving their self-worth or that they're worthy of being loved through their pickleball game. So when you have a player that is dying on the court because they're not tender with themselves, what are some of the strategies that you use to help them get out of that place of self-recrimination?
And I think I would go back to finding that reset mechanism for them. I think a lot of the work that I do with players in that respect it would be more mental than physical. And then if we get to that phase where they're feeling more mentally tough, then I would move on to more of the skill set piece.
I'd love some specifics, like when you talk about resetting, like tell me the diverse way that you have your.
So you're saying if you're coaching someone, or if your partner is going through that?
No, you're coaching someone.
Something I use in the classroom when I'm teaching as well is the term I was chunking the activity. So if you've got 4 or 5 things that you want to go over with that student, if they're hitting a mental roadblock with step 1 in your lesson, and just like if I'm teaching a unit in my history class in school, if my students are struggling, then I'm going to forget 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm going to just focus on 1 until they get it.
Right.
So I'll pause. If I have 4 things I'm going to get through in a lesson, we might spend the whole time on the first part. Whether I'm in the classroom or on the court, that seemed to be a proven tool that I use.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Nancy Sutton has sent in a question. What is your go-to drill that is most beneficial to you for the third shot drop? So what do you find is the best way to practice that shot?
The third shot drop.
Yes.
I actually start by working on my reset first. So I take it out of the air and kind of mimic the motion of shortening my stroke. And then when I move back to that baseline, I use a lot of targets. So I'll put cones down and have specific areas where I'm going to hit that third ball to. A lot of my third ball drop work, I also build fitness into it, because I know sometimes we have a hard time as pickleball players hitting a good third ball until the 4th or 5th one you try to hit, and that prevents you from moving forward into the court. And so I actually, Rachel, you'll like this one. I actually have a lot of music going when I do my drilling. So if Rachel and I are drilling, for instance, and she's at the kitchen line and I'm at the baseline, I'll put on a song. It might be 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to hit third balls the entire song. So I'm going to just keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. And that way I get more reps. I get to shore up my stroke, and I improve my endurance at the same time.
So you just don't stay in place though and do one drop after the other. Are you to work on your endurance? Are you moving your body a little bit more than just
Yeah, well,
having?
it's a continuous pattern. So I would ask my partner, my drilling partner, to hit me the ball back in a reasonable place, but to not hit it to the same place the whole time. So they would be moving me around, and I would have to adapt.
And then are you using the whole entire baseline, or are you staying in one half of the court?
One half of the court.
Okay.
Yeah, and just like with the skinny singles work that we put in, I would want to make sure that I do this drill at all 4 different angles in the court too, not just straight ahead, but I would do this cross court as well.
Ron's one of our stalwart members. He's been in the club forever, and I don't know if he signed on, but he did have some questions here. He's also noticing that the third shot drives are becoming more prominent, and so he was asking, what advice can you give us to have more success defending these hard hit balls? And he says depth of serve, service returns. He's just wondering, like, what would you advise to a beginner or advanced beginner to deal with that power coming at them?
Yeah, I think the answer is twofold. I think, first of all, if you want to prevent people from hitting as many at you, then work on hitting that return deeper in the court. I am such a proponent of using targets too. So anything you have, it could be a water bottle, it could be a cone, it could be an extra paddle. Put those down in the court and try to hit that target. Or what I use a lot is with my tennis program, we have a long rope. It's called the rope zone. And I will put the rope from one sideline to the other and create a mini window. You know, it could be a foot between or 2 feet between that rope and the baseline. And I'm going to work on hitting every return in between that target area until I hit 10 or 15 in there. I think that's the first part of the answer. The second part would be when you notice that your opponent is going to hit a hard third ball at you, having some sort of split step or a movement to get your feet set and ready is going to be helpful, because you want your momentum going forward to counteract that hard ball coming at you. The second part of that would be realizing that when that ball is being hit harder at you, your swing doesn't have to be as long. So if my opponents, you know, I get the good fortune of playing against the best players in the world, and you know, Ben Johns has a hard third ball drive. And every time he lines up for that, I know I have to do my split step, and I'm going to keep my paddle in front and have a short punch straight ahead. Because if I take a swing, a big backswing, he's probably going to hit me in the shoulder before I can hit the ball. So keeping the ball out in front and using your opponent's strengths is something that we can all, you know, use as well.
Ron has a second question, which is an interesting one for me. It's on short hops. He says he's one of our teachers in the villages. He says, I'm having difficulty teaching beginner and advanced beginner students how to hit the short hop dink shot. I cannot hit my dink to the exact spot for the student to be in the correct location for the short hop shot. Mm-hmm. It's just above their paddle. So he's wondering, how do you probably practice it, or how do you teach a short hop, you know, dink?
So you're saying a dink that someone doesn't have time to set up for. It's a quick, the ball hits the ground and then they hit it. I would say, you know, and I know it's different now with the social distancing stuff, but pre-COVID, I would say I would stand right next to that student and drop the ball for them. Oh. You know, get your bucket of balls and drop it so you can simulate. It's really hard for any level of pickleball player to put the ball as an instructor in the same spot every time, right? Because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. So I think manipulating the trajectory by dropping the ball would be something that's more helpful. Because that is a pretty specific, tough shot to feed every time. I mean, that's all timing based.
It is. You have to. I understand. I'm going to open up to the club. Is there anyone out there who has a question? We have about 2 minutes remaining.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hi. Wes, how do you break up with a partner?
Good point.
That's a tough question. It's good to see you, Barb. I remember a couple years ago in the villages meeting you. Oh, that's tough. I've been lucky that most of my pickleball breakups have been mutual, where we were both looking for different objectives. But I feel like open and honest communication is going to be super important. I had a pickleball breakup, so to speak, with someone I played mixed doubles with for a long time, and she's a very dear friend. And it was not easy, but the open, honest communication was super important. I feel like, the sting may hurt right away for people to hear that you don't want to play with them anymore, but in the long run, they're going to appreciate it more if you tell them.
Did you tell her or did she tell you?
I told her. She had also told me, not so directly, that she thought it would be a good idea if I played with a better partner.
Oh.
So what she had said, hey, I think I'm kind of holding you back. I think you should look for another, you should look for another partner. And then when I said, hey, I think I'm going to look for a new partner, it didn't go as well, but at least the groundwork was laid for it. So,
We're very close. I want to thank you, Wes. I want to thank you now in case we get cut off.
Okay, thanks
So much for doing this. We really appreciate it.